Today I'm gonna get a little hokey on you. I'm gonna be a little sentimental, a little nostalgic, a little emotional, but it's gonna be real. I'm gonna share something with you that I think matters, and it's real, and it's important. That's why I'm gonna share it, but it's gonna be a little, we'll see. But welcome back to the Aha Moments, where every day I share the lessons I've learned in my work as a psychotherapist and in my life to inspire you to live your very best life. Of course, I'm your host, Elliott Connie, and let's hone in on that bit. I say it every time as we open this show. I always say I'm going to share the things I learned in my work as a psychotherapist. And there's some things I learned as a psychotherapist that I think everybody should learn. And this week I'm going to talk to you about what I learned as a psychotherapist that I think matters, that I think has carryover, that I want all of you to gain lessons from. And I want to start with my first observation is how everyone, and I mean everyone, deserves compassion. I'm going to be honest with you. When I first came into the field of psychotherapy, as a student and I was just beginning grad school, I thought I was going to learn how to help sick people, I guess, mentally sick. I thought I was going to learn how to help bad people. I thought I was going to learn how to help people with problems. What I've come to realize after years of doing psychotherapy is I don't think there are sick, bad people, broken people. I think there are people that have challenges in their life that some people have the good fortune to not have. And we get ourselves into trouble when we judge people based upon how they're living their life because you don't know what's happened to them. You don't know what they've been through. I used to have this job. My very, very first job in the helping professions is I worked at a halfway house / drug treatment center. And there was this girl, I'll never forget this girl, who was there for drug treatment. And she was there for many, many months. And this girl she was really pretty, I guess the best way I can describe her. She was kind of young, like in her early 20s, and had made some really poor choices in terms of drugs and alcohol. She had, I think, 2 children, if my memory serves me correctly. And the state of Texas had removed her 2 children from her care. There are lots of ways to look at this woman and think, you just make really bad choices and you're not a good person. You use drugs, you use alcohol, and you use drugs and alcohol more than you parent your children, and you're bad and you're awful and you're all these things. But the other truth about this woman is when she was growing up, she was a cute girl. And her mom used to let her friends assault her as a trade for drugs. That happened when this girl that I'm referring to, the one that I met, from puberty, 12 years old or so, until she turned 18 and left the house. So that's 6 years of being raped by your mom's friend so your mom could get drugs. She said it hurt so bad. The pain of that experience was so awful that she started using drugs. Serious drugs like crack cocaine and heroin, real serious drugs. She got pregnant somewhere along the way and wasn't in a condition to care for her children, so thus the state of Texas took them away. But meeting people like that, I realized, it's not appropriate to talk about her as bad. She just, I don't know how I would have conducted life if my parents did to me what her parents did to her. Everyone has a story, and they deserve our compassion, our care, our warmth, and our love. And it changed me. Meeting people like her specifically, it changed me. It made me want to be the kind of person that can spread love and remind people that warmth and care are more necessary than judgment. And over the years, I've met tons of people that on the surface, if you look at their choices, they're making really bad choices and they're maybe not the greatest people and all those things. But when you look below the surface, you realize they've been living with a level of pain and they've been going through things that the average person hasn't gone through. So thus people don't understand how they live their life. And I think that's an important thing that we should all learn is everybody you meet they've got a story. Everybody you meet is going through something. And our job as people, not just my job as a psychotherapist, but our job as people is just to be caring. I think the greatest thing we can offer someone is care. And if there's one thing I think we need more of in this world is that. So that's the biggest thing that I've learned in my work as a psychotherapist. That's the biggest thing that I carry with me that I didn't know when I first started my therapy career, and I want you guys to know now. So I want you to look out for opportunities to give care, warmth, and compassion to people who may not be living life the way you are. I think that in and of itself would make this world a better place. So thank you so much for listening today. Please keep sharing this podcast with your friends and on your social media platforms. It means the world to me. And don't forget to subscribe wherever it is you listen to your podcast, where it's Apple, Google, Simplecast, Spotify, wherever it is. And also go support me on Patreon, where there's bonus material. You can have weekend episodes of this podcast, plus PDF downloads, lots of cool stuff. And I look forward to seeing you tomorrow. People always ask me if being a psychotherapist has made a difference in my life. Meaning, has it contributed to my own happiness and my own satisfaction and my own quality of life? And the answer is yes, and today I'm going to tell you exactly how. So welcome back to the Aha Moments, where every day we share the lessons that I've learned in my work as a psychotherapist and in my life to inspire you to live your very best life. Of course, I'm your host, Elliott Connie, and I want to talk to you about what being a psychotherapist has done to help me. And I'm going to answer this in two ways. The first way, I'm going to tell you how my clients inspire me. Years ago, I worked with a couple. This was a couple that inspired me, literally kind of blew my mind. Everybody is aware of a bucket list. There was a movie called The Bucket List, and me and my best friend in Massachusetts, his name is Kyle, we were like, we're going to do some of that stuff when we grow older. And I saw this couple once, and it was a couple, they had gotten kind of stale in their relationship. Things in their relationship were pretty static, and they came to therapy to try to spice things up a bit. And after the first session, they came back for the second session, and things were just robustly different. And things had transformed quite a bit. And I asked what had been different, and they said, we left the first session realizing we need to be more exciting, we need to be more inspired, we need to be more invigorated in our lives. So I asked them what they did to do that, and they said we went home and we wrote a sexual bucket list. And we started doing the things that were on the sexual bucket list. And without going into too much detail, they told me some of the things they were doing and how it made a difference in their life. They left my office, and I was blown away because I had never thought about having bucket lists for different parts of my life. It just had never dawned on me that you could have a bucket list for the different areas and components of your life. So when they left, I started thinking about my professional bucket list, and I made a list, still have it. I made a list of the professional accomplishments I wanted to achieve by the end of my career. And I don't know, it was like 20 things. Like I made a pretty long list. And by the way, one of the things I'm super proud of is, we're now however many years after that moment, and there's only 2 things on my list that I have not done. I won't share what they are, but there are only 2 things. But that's an example of how I was inspired to something I wouldn't have thought about, except this couple shared with me how they solved one of their problems, and it inspired how I would live my life. The second answer I would give you is, in my field, there's something called secondary trauma. And secondary trauma is like if you spend your career talking to people about the problems and pains and traumas they have in your life, you inherently have traumas and pains and things in that you take on. When they talk about the traumas and pains and struggles they have in their life, it becomes traumas and pain that you kind of secondarily, almost through osmosis, take on in your life. Well, there's also this thing called secondary resilience. And I spend my days talking to people about how they overcome pain and problems and how they thrive and grow and how they go from really struggling to overcoming those struggles and becoming the best version of themselves. It's a really big deal to sit with people and watch them do that. It's a really big deal to sit with people and watch them be able to overcome their struggles. And it inspires my life, and it has me thinking, if they can do that, then I can do this. Like, if some of the things I've heard people get through in their life, some of the struggles I've heard people overcome and deal with, it makes me feel like, gosh, if they can do those hard things in their life, then I can do hard things in my life too. And it makes a huge difference. Like, it really makes a massive, huge, transformative difference. I think sometimes we think the best way to get what we want is trying to figure out how to receive. But the best way to get what you want is to be a giver and to try to give the very things that you want to receive. And then those things get reciprocated. My entire career has stood for that. I have spent my whole career wanting to make a difference in people's lives, genuinely, selflessly, authentically. in turn, I've gotten way more out of this experience than I think my clients could have gotten from me. And it just makes me want to show up and work that much more to make a difference in people's lives. So if you want to have something good happen for you, do something good for other people. And I want you to think about your life. So here's my call to action today. I want you to write down 3 things, 3 different ways that you've helped others in the past. And non-family, like not your wife, not your kids, not your husband, but 3 things you've done for like a stranger or somebody at work or a colleague or a peer. And I want you to think, what difference did it make in your life to be there for that person? Thank you for listening today. It means the world to me that you continue to support my podcast and share this on your social media and with at least one person in your personal life. So please continue to do so. And don't forget to subscribe wherever it is you listen to podcasts. It would mean the world to me. You can do that at Apple Podcast, Google, Spotify, Simplecast, wherever it is you listen to podcasts. And you can also support this podcast on Patreon and get lots of bonus material. So please do that. And I look forward to seeing you tomorrow. Today on the podcast, I'm going to share with you the biggest lesson that I learned from working with clients. It's literally something that I wish every single human being could know. And I'm going to talk to you about it in depth here on the podcast today. So welcome back to the Aha Moments, where every day I share the lessons I've learned in my work as a psychotherapist and in my life to inspire you to live your very best life. Of course, I'm your host, Elliott Connie. So let me tell you something funny. So growing up in Massachusetts, and I can't remember if I've ever talked about this on this podcast, but growing up in Massachusetts, people had a really silly phrase that I would hear all the time as a kid. And that is, if you asked for directions, if you walked up to somebody from Boston in, the late 1980s, early 1990s, back before there was navigation systems and all that stuff, and you said, hey, how do you get to Faneuil Hall? The person would say, oh, you can't get there from here. You have to go over there, and then you can get there. And as a kid, I would hear that, and I would think, but that can't be true, because the implication is, where I'm currently standing, it's impossible for me to get to the destination. In essence, what people are saying is, you can't get there from here. You have to go over there, and then take a right and a left and do all these things, and then you can get there. And I would be thinking, but isn't that getting there from here? And that is kind of the lesson that I want to express today. The one thing that I wish everyone could know, the one thing that I have learned more than any other in my work as a psychotherapist is that anyone can get to anywhere from anywhere. That's really, really important. So I'm going to say it again. Anyone can get anywhere from anywhere. I have worked with clients that have been through things that if I told you the stories, if I shared with you the trauma, if I shared with you the struggle, you would bet $10 bazillion that that person, there's no way they made it through, but they did. I have seen marriages that have gone through everything they could possibly go through. I have seen people that have gone through traumas that are like unbelievable, but yet people can heal and they can grow and they can rebuild a happy, successful, sustainable life. And the reason that's so important is because number one ingredient towards accomplishing anything is hope. And I think people experience a really difficult thing and they get knocked down and they get beat up and they get kind of dragged through the mud and they go through a hard thing. And the immediate response they have is one of doubt, like, will I ever make it through this? And the answer is yes. Yes, you can. I'm thinking of a client one time I saw. This client was late for a therapy appointment. I'll never forget this. She was late for a therapy appointment, like 20 minutes late, significantly late. I'd never met her before. It was the first time seeing her. And I walked into the hallway of the office building and I noticed there was someone in the restroom, somebody in the ladies' restroom. And I wondered to myself, is this my client? I go back in my office and it turns out it was. This young, maybe 24-year-old comes into my office, clearly disheveled, going through some really hard things. I asked her what she hoped to accomplish in her life. She told me she wanted to be an attorney. And at this point, being an attorney would have been laughable for this person. Like, if you could just see the picture that I saw, it just would have been laughable. I saw her a week later, and then a week after that, and I later found out that she was in the bathroom. The reason she was late for that first appointment is she was in the bathroom using heroin because she was getting dope sick. Those of you know that when you stop using certain drugs, you have withdrawal symptoms, and that's called dope sickness. And she was getting dope sick. So in her dope sickness, to stave off dope sickness, she used heroin in the bathroom right before her first therapy appointment. And I saw her probably 3 or 4 times. And about 5 years later, I got a phone call from that woman thanking me for helping her because she had just graduated with a law degree and she'd been clean for about 4 years. And I asked her, why was she thanking me? And she said, because you were the first person I told I wanted to be an attorney that didn't laugh, that didn't lecture me, that didn't think less of me. You were the first person that immediately talked to me as if it was realistic, and how proud she was that she now became an attorney. And listen, I share that story with you now to say, like, if this young girl can go through everything she went through and still become an attorney, I promise you, whatever you're struggling with, whatever is bugging you, whatever is getting in your way, you can overcome it and become the best version of yourself. Like, that's the amazing thing about this human journey, is we are so much more capable than we give ourselves credit for. And as a psychotherapist, I've graciously, luckily, privilegedly had a front seat to people's brilliance. And quite frankly, it's been amazing and it's changed my life. And I hope that level of hope changes yours too. So just think about that as you're dealing with stuff. Anybody can get anywhere from anywhere. Love you guys. So thank you so much for listening to the podcast today. Please continue to share the podcast on your social media platforms with at least one person that you think could benefit from hearing this message today. And don't forget to subscribe. You can do that on Apple Podcasts, Simplecast, Spotify, wherever it is you enjoy listening to your podcast. And also support me on Patreon, where there's bonus material. And I look forward to seeing you tomorrow. Do you want to know what I wish every person knew about therapy? What I wish every person knew about the process of psychotherapy and what happens in psychotherapy? Well, that's what I'm going to share today. So welcome back to the Aha Moments, where every day I share the lessons I've learned in my work as a psychotherapist and in my life to inspire you to live your very best life. I remember early in my career as a psychotherapist, I had 2 experiences that made me realize that people don't really understand what therapy is about. The first thing that happened was this client came into my office and immediately laid down on my couch. And I said to him, like, what are you doing? And he said, isn't this what I'm supposed to do? Like, aren't you going to pull out a notepad and ask me about my childhood and my mom and all those things? And I was like, no, not necessarily. Can you sit up? Because that's how conversations happen. And I realized that he had just seen some therapist on television that was emulating Sigmund Freud in the 1940s, and not what psychotherapy really was. And then around the same time, another thing that happened was this client was in my office. She was a woman, and she was really emotional about being in therapy, and like the therapy hadn't even really started yet, and she was really super duper anxious. And I asked her if she was okay, and she said, no, I'm not. I'm afraid you're going to yell at me like Dr. Phil. And I had to reassure her that I'm not going to yell at her like Dr. Phil. And over the years, it's become clear to me that a lot of people don't understand what psychotherapy is about. Oftentimes, people would end therapy and say, I had no idea that therapy could be like this. I had no idea that therapy could be this helpful, that therapists could make this kind of a difference. And it makes me want to express, what therapy is. It's about change, and it's about hope. What therapy is supposed to be about is a place where you go to get things organized in your head, to get things resolved in your head in such a way that you can move forward with hope and do things differently in your life. At its core, that's what psychotherapy is supposed to be all about. That's what psychotherapy is really supposed to be about. It's not supposed to be about coming to the therapist and admitting all of your problems and your flaws and then getting yelled at by a psychotherapist. In fact, you don't have to admit all your problems and all your flaws at all. Coming to a psychotherapist should be just as normalized and just as effective as going to a gym. In order for me to go to a gym, I don't have to admit to the personal trainer all of the horrible food decisions that I make. I don't have to beat myself up when I'm talking to my personal trainer. Going to a psychotherapist should be just as normalized as going to a dentist. I don't have to admit all of the horrible things I've done to my teeth when I go see the dentist. The dentist's job is to help me get my teeth clean so I can move forward and go forward in a more healthy way. That should be psychotherapist. And I think that there's still a stigma about psychotherapy being like there's something wrong with you. And look, here's the truth. Life is really complicated. Things that go on in our lives is really challenging and really troubling. And very few of us can get through it without someone to lean on. And sometimes that someone to lean on can and should be your friends and family. Sometimes you need to lean on someone that knows you and loves you, and you can talk to them about what's going on in your life and end up with things more sorted. But other times, it can't be someone that you know because it's such an intimate thing that we need someone that does not know us, that has very specialized training to help us sort these things out. That's the whole purpose of psychotherapy, to make life more livable when you can't really talk to your friends and family about the issues. And I wish everyone knew that we're here to help you be your very, very best self. We're here to help you become the best version of you. And not all that dissimilar from a personal trainer or a dentist or a yoga instructor. We're just here to take care of your mental health in the same way they take care of your physical and or dental health. We're here to help you be the best version of yourself. And we need to remove the stigma that says, I'm going to see a psychotherapist, it means there's something wrong with me, or I'm weak, or any of those things. It just means life is really complicated. And some of the things that happen in life are really, really difficult. And when those difficult things get in the way of us being our best selves and living our best lives, it is okay to reach out for help. In fact, it's something we should absolutely do. So reach out to a psychotherapist. Find someone in your local area. Find someone that can help you. We're here because we want to make a difference. And I want you guys to prioritize your mental health in the same way that you prioritize your spiritual health and go to church, your physical health and go to the gym, your dental health and go see the dentist. I want you guys prioritizing all of your health and don't ignore your mental health. So that's my challenge for you this week. Thank you so much for being here and for sharing this podcast on your social media platforms and with people in your personal life. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for sharing this podcast on your social media platforms and with people in your personal life. Please continue to do that, and also support this podcast by subscribing. You can do that on Apple Podcasts, Simplecast, Spotify, wherever it is you enjoy listening to podcasts. And don't forget, you can also support this podcast on Patreon. That would mean the world to me, and there's bonus material there. And I look forward to seeing you tomorrow. You want to know something that's been really, really interesting in the past few years, actually, which is watching the human global relationship with mental health and the way that has evolved and the way I've observed it as a psychotherapist, and that's what I want to share today. Welcome back to the Aha Moments, where every day I share the lessons I've learned in my work as a psychotherapist and in my life to inspire you to live your very best life. Of course, I'm your host, Elliott Connie, and mental health and our relationship with mental health has been fascinating to me from the beginning of my psychotherapy training. Like, I remember in the early days, I was in graduate school, and psychotherapy was still quite stigmatized. Dr. Phil, it's a popular television show that's centered around mental health. I happen to think it's a bit of a sham. Dr. Phil is not a psychotherapist, all the things. But one of the things that I've appreciated about that platform is it has done a lot to destigmatize mental health. And over the years, I watch people treat their mental health with a significant level of priority that I think is a good thing, that I think is important and shows that we're moving forward and making progress. For so long, people going to get their mental health addressed made people feel like there was something wrong with them, or they were weak or needed to be fixed. But the truth is, you need to take care of your brain the same way you need to take care of your heart, the same way you need to take care of your muscles, the same way you need to take care of your lungs, the same way you need to take care of your body. So that's the part that I think is going well and I think shows progress. What I think alarms me is what I've seen happen, I would say, in the last 5 to 7 years. Because our mental health, I think, has taken a hit. I think it is less stigmatized, but we are more anxious, angry, and fearful than I can ever remember us being. I think a couple of things have contributed to that. Number one, I think social media. We have a tendency to compare the worst of us to the best of what we're observing. So oftentimes people don't feel as good about themselves as they could because it looks like everybody else is doing great. So there's something wrong with me because I'm not doing as great as everybody else. The social media platforms that have exploded in the past few years, it's new that we have this much information about other people's lives. And I do think it has led to us thinking less about ourselves, making us more anxious, reducing our self-esteem, causing more depression. It's been a really, really hard learning experience for us. But I also think the news cycle has caused our mental health to suffer. Now, I'm not picking on one news platform or another, but I don't remember hate and anger and anxiety and fear being as high as it is in our current state of affairs. And I think it's problematic. Like, we have to get back to a point where regardless of what someone's political views are, that we can get along. We have to get back to a point where we don't have political views that cause other people to feel oppressed and to feel attacked and to feel violated. Like in the past few years, people have become so upset that mass shootings are at an all-time high. We've had violent demonstrations. We have all of these things because of the connection of fear that is going on in our society. And as a mental health professional, I watch this and it's heartbreaking. To be honest with you, the only cure is love. And I know that sounds hokey and it sounds crazy and sounds whatever, but it is the truth. It is the absolute truth that the balm that will heal our current plight is love. It is the absolute truth that what we need right now is love, and it will pull our mental health out of this difficult circumstance that we have found ourselves in. We have to find a way to love our neighbors in spite of our differences. That is how we heal, and that is how we move forward. So I beg you, find opportunities to love one another, heal one another, and be kind and nurturing to one another, and our mental health will benefit significantly. And that's what I want to call you to do today. That's what I want to ask you to do. Find a way to find it in your heart to love those that look differently, behave differently, love differently, act differently than you. It's okay. That's actually how we heal. Thank you so much for being here today. It means the world to me. Please continue to support this podcast by sharing it on your social media platforms or with at least one person in your personal life that you think could benefit from hearing this message today. And don't forget to subscribe wherever it is you love listening to your podcast, Apple, Google, Spotify, Simplecast, wherever it is, and continue to support this podcast on Patreon. That means the world to me. There's bonus material there for all of my Patreon followers. Thank you so much, and I look forward to seeing you on Monday.